The mining vessel drifted through the asteroid field like a dying whale, its hull by decades of desperate salvage operations. Captain pressed her six-fingered hand against the bridge viewport, watching the distant stars that had once welcomed her people's ships. Now those same stars belonged to the hegemony and her species, though were nothing more than galactic outcasts. "Captain, we're down to 18% power reserves," reported engineer from his station. His usually vibrant blue skin had faded to a sickly gray, a sure sign of the chronic malnutrition that plagued their entire crew. "The recycling systems are failing again." His mandibles clicked in frustration. They had once been proud members of the Galactic Consortium, their crystalline technology and peaceful nature earning them respect across dozens of systems. That was before the hegemony's expansion, before the accusations of harboring dissidents, before the economic sanctions that slowly strangled there. "How long before total system failure?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 3 days, maybe 4 if we shut down non-essential systems." The bridge fell silent except for the ominous groaning of stressed metal. 43 souls aboard this vessel, the last free in known space. There had surrendered to hegemony rule 6 months ago, accepting subjugation rather than extinction. Only a few ships like theirs remained, wandering the outer rim and scavenging for survival. "Captain, I'm picking up something on long-range sensors," called out Navigator K. Her voice carried a note of excitement that had been absent for weeks. "Multiple contacts moving in formation." His heart sank. Formation meant military. Military meant hegemony patrol ships hunting for refugees like them. How many? 7 ships. Wait, that's not right. Kay's antennae twitched as she recalibrated her instruments. "These energy signatures are completely unknown. They're not in any database." "Could be new hegemony designs," suggested grimly. "No, these are different. The propulsion systems, the power output patterns. I've never seen anything like this." Through the viewport, could see distant points of light growing brighter. Whatever these ships were, they were approaching fast. She had 2 choices: try to run on failing engines and probably die anyway, or stay and face whatever was coming. "All stop," she ordered. "If we're going to die, we'll do it with dignity." The unknown ships closed the distance with remarkable speed. As they drew nearer, could make out their unusual design, sleek, angular vessels that seemed to flow like liquid metal. They were smaller than hegemony dreadnoughts, but moved with a grace that suggested advanced technology. "They're hailing us," reported Communications Officer Ara. "Multiple frequencies, multiple languages. They're trying everything." "Put them through." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a face that made the entire bridge crew gasp. The being had only 2 eyes, positioned forward on its face like a predator. Its skin was pale pink, almost hairless except for strange fur above the eyes and on top of its head. Most unsettling of all, when it spoke, its mouth revealed flat white teeth with pronounced canines. "This is Captain Sarah of the UES Aurora," the creature said in perfect galactic standard. "We've detected your distress beacon. Do you require assistance?" Exchanged glances with her crew. Distress beacon. They hadn't activated any beacon, their communication systems barely functioned. Yet somehow these strangers had found them in the vastness of space. "I am captain of the vessel," she replied carefully. We were not aware we were broadcasting any signals." The strange being's expression softened, an emotion recognized despite the alien features. "Your ship's automated systems sent out an emergency signal. We're the nearest response team. Are you in need of medical assistance, supplies, or repairs?" The words seemed too good to be true. In his experience, strangers who offered help usually wanted something in return. The hegemony had taught the galaxy that mercy was weakness and charity was a lie. "Who are you?" she asked. "What species, what government do you represent?" "We're humans," Captain replied. "We represent the United Earth Alliance. We're new to this region of space, but our standing orders are to assist any vessels in distress." Humans whispered, "I've never heard of them." Neither had, in all her years she had never encountered this species or their government. That either meant they were from very far away or they were very new to space travel. Either possibility carried risks. "We appreciate your offer," said diplomatically, "but we wouldn't want to impose. We can manage our repairs ourselves." Captain's expression showed something hadn't seen directed at her people in years: genuine concern. Captain, our sensors indicate your life support systems are critically low. Your power reserves won't last another 4 days. Please let us help. The accuracy of their assessment was startling. These humans had better sensors than most hegemony ships, yet they claimed to be new to the region. Found herself in an impossible position: trust these strangers or watch her crew die slowly in the cold of space. Captain Ara spoke quietly. They're right about our systems, we don't have much choice. Through the viewport, the human ships had arranged themselves in a protective formation around not an aggressive posture, but one that would shield them from any approaching threats. The gesture spoke volumes about these beings' intentions. Very well, decided. We accept your assistance. Captain smiled, revealing those predatory teeth again, but somehow the expression conveyed warmth rather than threat. Excellent. We're preparing to transfer emergency supplies and a repair team. Is your docking bay functional? Barely, but yes. Perfect. Captain, may I ask what happened to your ship? You're flying a vessel, but you're far from any territories. The question struck like a physical blow. The mandibles drooped as the weight of her people's tragedy settled on her shoulders once again. How could she explain the systematic destruction of everything her species had built? How could she convey the depths of their fall from grace? We are fell to the hegemony, she said simply. We're refugees. Captain's expression darkened. The hegemony, we've heard reports about them from other systems, nothing good. You know of them? Was surprised. If these humans were truly new to the region, how had they already learned about the galaxy's greatest threat? We've encountered some of their patrol fleets. They weren't particularly friendly. Stone suggested there was more to that story. Captain, would you and your senior staff be willing to come aboard our ship? We'd like to discuss your situation over a proper meal. A proper meal. The words conjured memories of better times, when cuisine was celebrated across multiple systems, and their crystal gardens fed millions. Now they survived on recycled protein paste and recycled water that tasted of metal and despair. We couldn't accept such generosity from strangers. You're not strangers anymore, said with conviction. You're people in need, and helping people is what humans do. Studied the human captain's face, searching for signs of deception or hidden agenda. Instead, she saw only sincerity and what looked like determination. These creatures, whatever they were, seemed genuinely committed to helping her people. We would be honored to accept your invitation, she finally replied. As the communication ended and the human ships moved into docking positions, felt something she hadn't experienced in months: hope. She didn't know what these humans wanted or what their true intentions were, but for the first time since fleeing her, she wasn't facing the universe alone. The first human shuttle appeared in their sensors, a small, efficient craft that moved with the same fluid grace as their larger ships. Whatever technology these beings possessed, it was clearly advanced beyond anything they had seen before. Captain said quietly, "What if this is a trap?" Considered the question seriously. "Then we die with full bellies instead of empty ones," she replied. "But I don't think it's a trap. These beings, they feel different." As the shuttle docked with their failing vessel, prepared to meet the species that might just change everything for her people. In the cold depths of space, surrounded by the wreckage of their former lives, the last free were about to discover that sometimes salvation came from the most unexpected sources. The docking bay doors opened with a grinding protest of failing mechanisms, revealing the first humans they had ever seen in person. They moved with purpose but not aggression, carrying supplies and equipment that looked far more advanced than anything in the galactic databases. Captain stepped forward, her movements confident but respectful. "Captain, it's an honor to meet you in person. Welcome to what I hope will be the beginning of a friendship between our species." As looked into the human's strangely placed eyes, she sensed that this moment would be remembered as a turning point, not just for her crew, but for every forsaken soul wandering the dark spaces between the stars. The human ship's docking bay was unlike anything it had ever seen. Clean, efficient, and filled with technology that hummed with quiet power. As she and her senior staff followed Captain through corridors that practically glowed with health, the contrast to their dying vessel became painfully obvious. "Your ship is remarkable," commented, running her hand along a wall panel that responded to her touch with soft light. "How long have your people been spacefaring?" Captain exchanged a glance with her first officer, a tall human with dark skin and kind eyes. About 200 years, though we only reached this region recently, we're still learning about the local political situation. 200 years was nothing in galactic terms. Most species took to develop faster than light travel, yet these humans had built vessels that surpassed anything they had encountered. The implications were staggering. They entered what called the mess hall, a large, comfortable room with tables designed to accommodate various body types. The smell hit immediately, real food, cooked with spices and care. Her stomach clenched with desperate hunger. "Please sit anywhere you'd like," said, gesturing to the tables. "We've prepared a variety of dishes. Our computers analyzed your biology from the medical scans we took of your ship's atmosphere. Everything should be safe for physiology." Doctor, the ship's chief medical officer, approached with a tablet in hand. "We've also prepared some nutritional supplements. Our scans indicated severe malnutrition among your crew. With your permission, we'd like to provide medical assistance." Pride warred with desperation. They had once been a proud people, their cities works of art and their technology respected throughout the galaxy. Now they were reduced to accepting charity from strangers. "We are grateful for any assistance," she said, her voice barely steady. As her crew settled at the tables, human personnel began bringing out dishes that made their mouths water. Roasted vegetables that actually tasted like plants instead of processed nutrients. Protein that had texture and flavor. Water that was clear and clean and tasted of nothing but itself. Engineer took his first bite and his antennae stood straight up in surprise. "By the 7 moons," he whispered, "I'd forgotten food could taste like this." Captain sat across from, her expression serious but warm. "Captain, we'd like to understand your situation better. Our intelligence reports about this region are limited, but what we've learned about the hegemony concerns us greatly." Swallowed a piece of what the humans called bread, a simple food that somehow contained more flavor than anything she'd eaten in months. "What would you like to know?" "Everything, how they operate, what they want, how they treat civilian populations. We're new here and we need to understand what we're dealing with." The direct approach surprised. Most species danced around sensitive topics with elaborate diplomatic protocols. These humans simply asked what they wanted to know. "The hegemony controls approximately 60% of this galactic arm," she began. "They've been expanding for over 3 centuries, absorbing or destroying any civilization that doesn't submit to their rule." "What happened to your people?" The question was gentle but direct. Found herself telling the story she'd tried not to think about for months. How the hegemony had started with trade sanctions, claiming they were harboring dissidents. How those sanctions had gradually expanded until her people couldn't buy food, medicine, or fuel. How the blockade had slowly strangled their entire civilization. "We never harbored dissidents," she said, her voice growing harder. "They have always been peaceful. We preferred negotiation to conflict, trade to conquest, but the hegemony saw our neutrality as weakness." Lieutenant Commander Jake, tactical officer, leaned forward. "What kind of military force does the hegemony field?" "Massive, they have thousands of ships from patrol craft to planet killers, but their real strength isn't military, it's economic. They control trade routes, manufacturing information networks. They can destroy a civilization without firing a shot." Doctor had been scanning the crew members with a handheld device. She approached the table with a troubled expression. "Captain, I need to share some medical findings. This crew isn't just malnourished. They're showing signs of chronic stress, sleep deprivation, and what appears to be early stages of several deficiency diseases." Closed her eyes. Even their bodies were betraying them, breaking down from the constant strain of survival. "We know. We've been rationing medical supplies for months." "How many are still free?" asked quietly. "Maybe 2,000, scattered across a dozen ships. Most surrendered and returned to our when the hegemony offered generous terms for submission." His mandibles clicked bitterly. Those terms included forced labor camps and reproductive restrictions. The humans exchanged looks that was learning to recognize. Anger, carefully controlled but unmistakably present. These beings didn't just disapprove of the hegemony's methods, they were genuinely outraged by them. "Captain," said carefully, "what if I told you there might be an alternative to surrender or endless flight?" "I would say that sounds too good to be true." Smiled, and for the first time those predatory teeth didn't seem threatening at all. "My species has a saying, The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. We've seen what the hegemony does to civilians. We can't ignore that. Navigator K, who had been quietly eating her first decent meal in weeks, looked up sharply. Are you suggesting armed resistance? Captain, with respect to your people's capabilities, the hegemony has resources that dwarf entire galactic sectors. Resources, yes, agreed, but not necessarily the best technology. From what we've observed, their military doctrine relies on overwhelming force rather than tactical innovation. Studied the human officers. Their confidence wasn't the bravado she'd seen in young species making empty threats. These beings spoke like they had actual experience with military conflict. You fought them before, she realized. 3 times, confirmed. They tried to incorporate a colony world in what they claimed was their territory. The colonists asked for our help. And we convinced the hegemony to reconsider their position. The casual way delivered that statement sent chills down spine. A species only 2 centuries into had fought the hegemony and won. Not once, but 3 times. How asked, voicing the question they were all thinking. Answered with a grin that was definitely predatory. Humans have a talent for asymmetric warfare. We don't fight fair when civilian lives are at stake. Doctor cleared her throat diplomatically. What the lieutenant commander means is that human military doctrine emphasizes mobility, adaptability, and creative problem-solving over raw firepower. Also added, we really don't like bullies. The conversation was interrupted by a chime from the ship's communication system. A young human officer appeared on a wall screen. Captain, we're picking up multiple contacts on long-range sensors. 15 ships in standard hegemony formation heading this way. His expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Distance and time to intercept. 4 hours at current speed. They're running a standard patrol sweep, but they'll definitely spot the ship. His heart sank. 4 hours before the nightmare began again. 4 hours before they were back to running, hiding, slowly dying in the darkness between stars. Captain, she said formally, we thank you for your kindness, but we won't ask you to fight our battles. We'll take what supplies you can spare and try to stay ahead of the patrol. Looked at her with an expression couldn't quite read. Captain, with respect, I don't think you understand the situation. What do you mean? I mean you're under the protection of the United Earth Alliance now, and humans don't abandon people who need help. Was already activating his tactical displays. Captain, I recommend Combat Formation Delta. Keep the civilian ship protected while we engage. Agreed, Doctor, I want all crew members moved to our medical bay. They'll be safer there. Stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Captain, you can't be serious. 15 hegemony ships against 7 of yours? That's suicide. Stood as well, and despite her smaller size, her presence suddenly seemed to fill the room. Captain, my species has a reputation for doing impossible things when the cause is right. Fighting tyranny to protect innocent people definitely qualifies. But why? Why would you risk your lives for strangers? The question seemed to puzzle, as if the answer should be obvious. Because it's the right thing to do, because everyone deserves to be free, because someone has to stand up to monsters, and if we don't do it, who will? As the human crew moved into action with practiced efficiency, realized she was witnessing something remarkable. These beings weren't just offering help. They were preparing to fight a superior force on behalf of people they'd known for less than a day. Captain, she said quietly, you could all die for this. Paused at the doorway, looking back with that strange human smile. Captain, everyone dies eventually. The trick is making sure you die for something that matters. The bridge of the UES Aurora transformed into something resembling organized chaos. Human officers moved with practiced efficiency, their hands dancing over control panels while multiple conversations flowed in clipped, professional tones. Watched from a corner position, struggling to follow the rapid exchange of tactical information. Hegemony formation confirmed, reported the sensor operator. 3 heavy cruisers, 8 destroyers, 4 patrol craft. Standard search pattern, but they're definitely heading for our position. Captain studied the tactical display with cold calculation. Time to contact. 3 hours, 47 minutes. What do you think? The tactical officer manipulated the holographic display, showing the enemy formation from multiple angles. Classic hegemony doctrine. Heavy ships in the center, destroyers spread wide for screening, patrol craft running point. They expect to overwhelm any opposition with superior firepower. Weaknesses. Their formation is rigid. They maintain position even when maneuvering. Also, intelligence suggests their crews rely heavily on automated systems rather than initiative. Found herself speaking before she could stop herself. Captain, their heavy cruisers carry plasma cannons that can cut through most armor. Their shields can absorb incredible amounts of punishment. How can 7 ships possibly stand against 15? Turned to her with that unsettling human smile. Captain, you're thinking like the hegemony. Bigger numbers, bigger guns, overwhelming force. Humans learned a long time ago that sometimes the smaller, faster, smarter fighter wins. Pulled up another display showing the local asteroid field. The terrain works in our favor. Lots of large rocks, sensor shadows, hiding spots, if we can draw them into the field. They won't follow, protested. Hegemony doctrine specifically avoids asteroid fields, too dangerous for large ships. That's what we're counting on, replied. Lieutenant Park, what's the status on our special modifications? A young officer at the engineering station looked up with obvious excitement. All 7 ships are equipped with the new stealth plating. We can ghost for up to 40 minutes before the power drain becomes critical. And the drone packages. Loaded and ready. 200 units per ship, full autonomous operation capability. Confusion must have shown on her face, because Doctor moved closer to explain. Human military technology focuses on force multiplication. We use drones, electronic warfare, and stealth rather than relying on heavy armor and big guns. But your ships are so small compared to theirs. Exactly, grinned. They'll underestimate us right up until it's too late. Captain moved to the center of the bridge. All ships, this is Aurora Actual. We have 15 hostiles inbound. Mission parameters: protect the civilian vessel and demonstrate to the hegemony that human space is not to be trifled with. Execute plan Hornet's Nest on my mark. The next hour passed in careful preparation. Human ships spread throughout the asteroid field, their positions coordinated through burst transmissions that lasted mere microseconds. Watched the tactical display with growing amazement as the small human fleet seemed to vanish from sensors entirely. How are you doing that? She asked. Adaptive stealth technology, explained the science officer. We modify our energy signatures to match background radiation. To their sensors, we look like asteroids. That's impossible. Stealth fields require massive power cores. Not if you design them efficiently. Humans are very good at doing more with less. The hegemony patrol appeared on long-range sensors exactly on schedule. 15 massive ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls bristling with weapons that could level cities. As they approached the asteroid field, they slowed but maintained their rigid pattern. Vessel, this is Hegemony Command Ship Dominator, came the transmission on standard frequencies. You are in violation of Hegemony Decree 447. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. Captain activated the general comm. This is Captain Sarah of the United Earth Alliance. The vessel you're threatening is under our protection. I suggest you reconsider your approach. A new voice responded, deeper and more threatening. Human vessel, you are interfering with hegemony justice. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. I'm afraid I can't do that, replied calmly. Perhaps we should discuss this like civilized beings. There is nothing to discuss. You have 30 seconds to withdraw before we open fire. Muted the transmission and turned to. 30 seconds, how generous of them, all ships execute. What happened next? Everything thought she knew about space combat. Instead of charging forward with guns blazing, the human ship seemed to multiply. Hundreds of small objects detached from each vessel, spreading throughout the asteroid field like a metallic cloud. Drones, explained casually. Each one carries enough firepower to disable a patrol craft. The hegemony formation responded predictably, opening fire on anything that showed an energy signature. Plasma beams lanced through space, shattering asteroids and destroying dozens of drones. But for every drone they destroyed, 10 more seemed to appear. What sorcery is this? Demanded the hegemony commander. Just human ingenuity, replied. We call it asymmetric warfare. The first phase of the attack began with surgical precision. Human ships emerged from stealth just long enough to launch devastating attacks on the hegemony destroyer's sensor arrays, then vanished again before return fire could lock onto them. Within minutes, half the enemy fleet was flying blind. Watched in amazement as the massive hegemony ships floundered in the asteroid field, their sensors confused by false signals and their rigid formation beginning to break apart. The humans struck like ghosts, appearing just long enough to cripple a ship's weapons or engines before disappearing again. "How are you moving so fast?" she asked. "Momentum transfer drives," replied the helmsman. "We can change direction instantly without worrying about inertia. Makes us very hard to track." The hegemony heavy cruisers finally began to respond, their plasma cannons carving through asteroids in an attempt to flush out the attackers. But they were fighting an enemy that refused to engage on their terms. Every time they concentrated fire on one area, the humans struck from another direction. "Enough games," roared the hegemony commander. "All ships full bombardment of the asteroid field, destroy everything." "That was a mistake," observed as the enemy ships began indiscriminate firing. "They just told us exactly where they are and gave us cover for the final phase." Captain activated the fleet comm. "All ships initiate swarm protocol, time to end this." The remaining drones suddenly coordinated their attacks, thousands of small craft converging on the hegemony formation from every direction. But these weren't explosive attacks. Instead, they attached themselves to enemy hulls and began cutting through armor with focused energy beams. "They're not trying to destroy the ships," realized. "Destruction is wasteful," explained. "We're disabling their weapons and engines, much more efficient." The hegemony ships found themselves under attack by an enemy they couldn't see, couldn't catch, and couldn't effectively fight. Their plasma cannons were useless against targets too small and fast to lock onto. Their heavy armor meant nothing against weapons that bypassed it entirely. One by one, the enemy vessels went dark as their power cores were systematically disabled. The few ships that tried to flee found their engines dead, their crews trapped in metal coffins drifting through space. Within 2 hours, 15 hegemony warships had been completely neutralized by 7 human vessels that had barely suffered a scratch. "Impossible," whispered the hegemony commander as his flagship's lights flickered and died. "Quite possible, actually," replied. "You just needed the right perspective. Surrender your remaining vessels and we'll arrange for rescue ships to collect your crews." The silence that followed spoke volumes. The hegemony, for all their technological superiority and overwhelming numbers, had been decisively defeated by a species they'd never encountered before. "Captain," said quietly, "I've never seen anything like that. Your tactics, your technology. How did humans develop such capabilities?" His expression grew serious. "Because we had to. Earth's history is full of conflicts where smaller forces defeated larger ones through superior strategy and technology. We learned that overwhelming force isn't always the answer." Was coordinating the recovery of their drones, most of which had survived the battle intact. "Plus, we really don't like bullies. Tends to make us creative when it comes to evening the odds." As human ships moved to secure the disabled hegemony vessels, realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. Not just a military victory, but a fundamental shift in the galactic balance of power. A new player had entered the game, one that played by entirely different rules. "Captain," she said formally, "on behalf of my people and all the civilians the hegemony has oppressed, thank you." Smile was warm and genuine. "Captain, this is just the beginning. If humanity is going to make a home in this galaxy, we need to make sure it's the kind of place where good people can live safely." As the human fleet regrouped around preparing to escort to safety, felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Genuine hope for the future. The galaxy's outcasts finally had champions, and those champions had just announced their presence in a way that would echo across every hegemony-controlled system. The age of human intervention had begun. 3 days after the battle, stood in the cargo bay of the human vessel Aurora, watching her crew work alongside human engineers to repair systems that had been failing for months. The transformation was remarkable, not just of their ship, but of her people's spirits. "The gravitational compensators are running at 98% efficiency," reported, his blue skin having returned to its healthy, vibrant color after days of proper nutrition. I've never seen components this sophisticated. Human engineer Lisa looked up from a control panel with a satisfied smile. That's standard UEA technology. We've learned to build things that last. Space is too dangerous for equipment failures. The casual way she spoke of advanced technology still amazed. What the humans considered standard equipment surpassed the best innovations by decades. Yet they shared it freely, asking for nothing in return except friendship. Captain appeared in the doorway, followed by several officers didn't recognize. Their uniforms carried different insignia, not human designs. "Captain, I'd like you to meet some friends of ours," said warmly. "This is Captain of the Republic, Commander I of the Federation, and Admiral representing the Free World's coalition." His mandibles clicked in surprise. 3 species she recognized from galactic databases, all of whom had supposedly been conquered or absorbed by the hegemony years ago. Yet here they were, very much alive and apparently very much free. Captain stepped forward, his reptilian features arranged in what assumed was a smile. "Captain, we heard about your people's situation. The humans suggested we might be able to help." "But you're," struggled to process what she was seeing. "The databases say the Republic fell to the hegemony 5 years ago." "The databases lie," replied grimly. "A common hegemony tactic. Declare victory, spread the news, make resistance seem hopeless. Meanwhile, we've been rebuilding our strength in systems they think they control." Commander I, whose features reminded of her own species, spoke in the clicking harmonics of ancient galactic standard. "The hegemony's reports of our conquest were greatly exaggerated. With human assistance, we've been liberating our worlds one system at a time." "Human assistance?" Looked to Captain for clarification. "We've been quietly working with resistance movements for the past year," explained. "Sharing technology, providing tactical support, sometimes direct military intervention. The galaxy is bigger than the hegemony realizes." Admiral, whose crystalline form resembled living geometry, spoke with the musical tones of her people. "The humans brought something we'd lost: hope. Their methods proved that the hegemony isn't invincible." The implications staggered. If these species were still fighting, still free, then the hegemony's control wasn't as complete as they claimed. Her people's surrender might have been premature. "How many others?" she asked quietly. 17 species actively resisting," replied. "Another dozen providing covert support. The Liberation Network spans 43 systems." "And you coordinate all of this?" "We facilitate," Captain corrected. "Each species maintains its independence. The humans simply provide the technological edge and tactical expertise we need to succeed." Doctor approached with a medical scanner in her hands. "Captain, I have an update on your crew's condition. With proper nutrition and medical care, everyone should be back to full health within 2 weeks." "Thank you, Doctor. We owe you so much already." "Actually," interjected, "we have a proposition that might help balance those scales." She activated a holographic projector, displaying a star map that showed the local galactic arm. Red markers indicated hegemony-controlled systems, while blue ones marked free or contested territories. There were far more blue markers than had imagined possible. "We've been tracking the remaining refugee ships," continued. 12 vessels scattered across 6 systems, all in desperate condition. We'd like to mount a coordinated rescue operation." His hearts raced. If even half her people could be saved, if they could find some way to rebuild. "What would you need from us?" "Information," replied, stepping up to the display. "Ship configurations, communication protocols, hiding places your people might use. We can find them with our sensors, but approaching them safely requires cultural knowledge." "And after the rescue?" Commander I spoke up. "The Federation has empty worlds, garden planets that were evacuated during the first hegemony advance. Your people could rebuild there in safety. The Republic could provide manufacturing facilities," added. "Your crystalline technology would be invaluable for our resistance efforts." Admiral's form shifted colors as she communicated emotions through bioluminescence. "The Free World's coalition offers citizenship and protection. No species should face extinction because they refuse to surrender their freedom." The generosity overwhelmed, not just from humans but from species who had their own struggles, their own losses to recover from. They were offering to share what little they had rebuilt. Why, she asked, the question directed at all of them. Why risk so much for refugees you barely know? The answers came in harmony, as if they'd discussed this philosophy many times before. Because freedom is worth fighting for, said firmly. Because unity makes us stronger than tyranny, clicked I. Because every preserved culture enriches the galaxy, sang. His response was simpler but no less powerful. Because it's the right thing to do. The human captain manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on a system at the edge of hegemony space. Operation Lighthouse begins in 72 hours. Simultaneous rescue operations across 6 systems, followed by immediate evacuation to safe territories. We estimate we can save at least 1,500. The coordination required? Shook her head in amazement. The hegemony will certainly respond with massive force. Let them, grinned with predatory satisfaction. We've been looking for an excuse to test some new toys. Besides, they'll be too busy dealing with simultaneous uprisings on a dozen worlds to focus on refugee rescue. Uprisings? The resistance networks have been planning coordinated strikes for months, explained. Your rescue provides the perfect distraction. While hegemony forces scramble to respond to military threats, we spirit away their victims. Admiral's bioluminescence shifted to warm amber tones. Captain, this operation will announce to the galaxy that the age of hegemony supremacy is ending. Your people's rescue will be a symbol of hope for every oppressed species. The weight of that responsibility should have been crushing, but instead felt energized. Her people wouldn't just be saved, they would be part of something larger, something meaningful. What do you need me to do? Smile held genuine warmth and respect. Be yourself. Be the captain who chose to trust strangers, who risked everything for the chance at something better. Help us find your people, and then help us build a galaxy where no one has to choose between freedom and survival. As the meeting broke up, and the various species representatives returned to their ships to coordinate the rescue operation, found herself alone with Captain. Captain, she said quietly, I need to understand something. Human technology, your military capabilities, your coordination with multiple species. You've been here longer than you originally claimed, haven't you? Nodded slowly. We've been operating in this region for 3 years, but we were careful, staying hidden, learning about the political situation before making contact. The last thing we wanted was to make things worse for the people already suffering under hegemony rule. And now we've learned enough. The hegemony has to be stopped, and stopping them requires more than just military force. It requires hope, unity, and proof that their way isn't the only way. Looked out through the viewport at the human fleet, each ship representing technology and philosophy that could reshape the galaxy. You're not just fighting the hegemony, are you? You're building something to replace it. We're helping others build it, corrected. Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We've seen what that kind of power does to people. We want to live in a galaxy where everyone has the chance to determine their own destiny. That evening, as watched human and alien crews working together to prepare for the largest rescue operation in modern galactic history, she realized she was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented. Not just an alliance, but a new way of thinking about cooperation. The hegemony ruled through fear and force, demanding submission and offering only survival in return. These allies offered something far more precious: respect, partnership, and genuine friendship between equals. 6 months after Operation Lighthouse, stood on the observation deck of the colony ship New Horizon, watching the first permanent structures take shape on the surface of Aura Prime. The world below sparkled with the distinctive crystal formations that marked architecture, but these weren't copies of their lost cities. These were something new: designs that incorporated lessons learned from their human allies and refugee experiences. The agricultural domes are ahead of schedule, reported her former navigator, Kay, who now served as the colony's development coordinator. Human soil enhancement techniques have increased our crop yields by 300%. Through the viewport, could see the bustling activity of a civilization being reborn. Children played in crystal gardens while their parents worked alongside human engineers, craftsmen, and technicians. The diversity would have been unthinkable under hegemony rule, where species mixing was strictly forbidden. Captain, called a familiar voice. Turned to see Captain approaching, her uniform now bearing the insignia of the Galactic Liberation Alliance. the formal name the resistance had adopted after their string of victories. Sarah smiled, using the human custom of informal address among friends. "I didn't expect to see you here. Aren't you supposed to be liberating the system?" "Mission accomplished 3 days ahead of schedule," replied with satisfaction. The hegemony garrison surrendered without firing a shot. Apparently, word about human tactics has spread far enough that most commanders prefer negotiation to destruction. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Operation Lighthouse had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest projections, rescuing not just the remaining refugees, but also freeing 6 entire hegemony labor camps. The coordinated uprisings had liberated 12 systems simultaneously, and the psychological impact had shattered the hegemony's aura of invincibility. "How many systems have joined the alliance now?" asked. 87 as of this morning," replied. "Another dozen are in active negotiation. The hegemony still controls the core systems, but their expansion has stopped completely." Doctor emerged from a transport shuttle, her medical bag slung over her shoulder. She'd been providing healthcare to refugee populations across the Alliance territories, her gentle competence becoming legendary among species who had forgotten what compassionate medicine looked like. "Captain," she called out warmly, "how are our patients adjusting to their new home?" "Better than we dared hope. The children especially seem to thrive here. They're learning to speak human languages alongside their own." "Cultural exchange is vital," agreed. "Each species brings unique perspectives and capabilities. Combined, we're far stronger than any of us could be alone." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the ship's communication system. A holographic display activated, showing Admiral, recently promoted to coordinate Alliance military operations, with an expression of barely contained excitement. Captain, you need to see this immediately," he said. "We just received a transmission from the hegemony core worlds. They're requesting formal negotiations." The implications hit like a physical blow. The hegemony, which had never negotiated with anyone, was asking to talk. After centuries of expansion and conquest, they were finally admitting they couldn't win through force alone. "What are their terms?" asked. "That's the interesting part. They're not proposing terms. They're asking what it would take for the Alliance to consider a ceasefire." And exchanged glances. The hegemony was offering to negotiate from a position of weakness, something that would have been inconceivable a year ago. "There's more," continued. "Intelligence reports indicate massive civil unrest throughout hegemony space. Apparently, news about our successful colonies and the Alliance's treatment of refugees has sparked independence movements on dozens of worlds." The irony wasn't lost on. The hegemony had always maintained control through information suppression, convincing their subjects that resistance was hopeless and alternatives didn't exist. Now those same subjects could see proof of thriving free societies, and the truth was proving more powerful than any weapon. "What's the Alliance Council's position?" asked. Cautious optimism. "We're willing to talk, but only if the hegemony agrees to immediate cessation of all military actions against civilian populations and opens their camps for international inspection." Doctor looked up from her medical scanner with a troubled expression. "Admiral, what about the millions of people still under hegemony control? Negotiation could take years while they continue to suffer." "That's why we're accelerating the liberation operations," replied grimly. "Every day we delay costs lives, but if we can achieve through negotiation what would otherwise require a decades-long war." Understood the dilemma. The Alliance had proven they could defeat hegemony forces, but the scale of their empire meant complete military victory would require enormous resources and cost countless lives. Yet trusting the hegemony to negotiate in good faith seemed equally dangerous. "There's something else," continued. "Emperor himself has requested a personal meeting with the human commander responsible for the impossible victories." He specifically asked for Captain. The request stunned everyone into silence. Emperor had ruled the hegemony for over 2 centuries, expanding their empire through ruthless efficiency and absolute power. For him to request a personal meeting with an enemy commander represented either desperate circumstances or careful planning for a trap. "My recommendation," said after a moment of consideration. "We accept the meeting, but on our terms, neutral ground, full security, and complete transparency about the negotiations." The Alliance Council agrees. They're proposing the colony as the meeting site. Mandibles clicked in surprise. Here, why? Smile was knowing. Because this colony represents everything the hegemony claims is impossible. Multiple species working together, refugees thriving instead of merely surviving, advanced technology shared freely rather than hoarded. Seeing it in person will send a message more powerful than any words. 3 weeks later, Empress personal transport entered the Aura system under heavy escort from both hegemony and Alliance fleets. The massive vessel dwarfed even the largest human ships, its black hull radiating menace even in peaceful approach. Stood in the colony's new diplomatic center, watching the hegemony delegation disembark. Emperor himself was an imposing figure, over 3 meters tall, his scaled hide bearing the scars of countless battles, his cold eyes taking in every detail of the thriving settlement around him. Captain stepped forward with calm confidence, her small human form seeming almost delicate next to the massive Emperor, but had learned not to mistake human physical size for weakness. "Your Imperial Majesty," said formally. "Welcome to Aura Prime. I am Captain Sarah, representing the Galactic Liberation Alliance." Emperor studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. "Captain, your reputation precedes you, though I confess the reality is not what I expected." "Expectations can be misleading, Your Majesty. I trust your journey was comfortable." The Emperor's gaze swept across the colony's crystal spires and diverse population. "Captain, I have conquered 43 species and absorbed their civilizations into my empire, yet I have never seen anything like this." "Like what, Your Majesty?" "Willing cooperation between species, shared technology and resources without exploitation, children of different worlds playing together without fear." His voice carried a note that might have been wonder. "How do you maintain order without force?" His answer was simple but profound. "We don't maintain order, Your Majesty. We maintain justice. When people feel safe and valued, they create their own order." The negotiations that followed lasted 5 days and changed the course of galactic history. The Alliance presented evidence of successful multi-species cooperation, shared technological advancement, and economic prosperity that exceeded anything the hegemony had achieved through conquest. Emperor, faced with irrefutable proof that his entire worldview was flawed, made a decision that shocked even his own advisors. He agreed to a gradual transition of power, allowing hegemony-controlled systems to choose their own governance through supervised referendums. The process wouldn't be quick or easy. Centuries of authoritarian rule had left deep scars, and many hegemony worlds would need years to develop stable democratic institutions. But for the first time in galactic memory, there was a path forward that didn't involve endless war. As watched the various diplomatic teams celebrating the preliminary agreement, she reflected on the remarkable journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, she had been the captain of a dying ship, leading the last remnants of a defeated people towards certain extinction. Now she was a respected member of an alliance that spanned hundreds of worlds. Her people were rebuilding their civilization on a world more beautiful than their original, and the galaxy's greatest tyranny was voluntarily dismantling itself. "Penny for your thoughts?" asked Doctor, using a human expression had learned meant friendly curiosity. "I was thinking about children," replied, gesturing toward the playground visible through the diplomatic center's windows. "Children who will grow up in a galaxy where freedom is normal, where cooperation between species is expected rather than forbidden. They'll never know what it feels like to be truly alone in the universe." Captain joined them at the window, her expression peaceful but alert. "That's what we're really fighting for, isn't it? Not just freedom for ourselves, but the right of future generations to live without fear." The 3 women, human, and human again, stood together in comfortable silence, watching children of a dozen species play games that would have been impossible under hegemony rule. In that simple scene lay the promise of everything they had worked to achieve. The galaxy still faced challenges. The transition from authoritarian empire to free confederation would take generations to complete. There would be setbacks, conflicts, and moments when the old ways seemed easier than the new ones. But humanity had proven something vital to the galaxy's forsaken peoples. No one had to face their struggles alone. When beings of good will work together, when they shared their strengths and supported each other's weaknesses, even the mightiest tyranny could be peacefully transformed. The age of the hegemony was ending. The age of the alliance, built on the radical human notion that freedom and cooperation could coexist, was just beginning. And in the crystal cities of Aura Prime, children played together under alien suns, speaking languages from a dozen worlds, dreaming dreams that would reshape the galaxy for generations to come. In 72 hours, the galaxy would learn that humanity had arrived not as conquerors but as liberators, and they had brought friends. As alarms began sounding throughout the ship and the crew prepared for battle, found herself believing, for the first time in months, that maybe the galaxy still had room for hope.